Almost good evening. You all have made it till almost after 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. So thank you very much. You all are troopers. And my name is Anthony Falzone. I'm one of the founders of FlowWest. We're a civil engineering and science and data science firm planning. I'm a geomorphologist, and I'm going to talk about Kelsey Creek and the fish passage barrier at the Main Street Bridge. Just to give you a little overview of the presentation, give you a brief background on Kelsey Creek. I'll go over that really quickly because we've gone over, other people have done a great job of talking about Kelsey Creek. Give you some project background, talk about the alternatives that we developed, and then the design that we advanced, and where we stand in permitting, next steps, and then to thank our project partners and acknowledge our funders. It's been a group effort. Originally, this project was started under the Elam tribe and is now being run by the we're working through the Big Valley. And just to give you an idea of what you're looking at here, that is the Main Street Bridge just outside of Kelseyville. You see the fish passage structure on the right side of the channel, and you can see where the white water is. That is the existing grade control structure that keeps the Kelseyville Bridge from collapsing from the channel being incised. So I guess I can advance it. Sorry, that was the intro slide. Missed that. All right, so Kelsey Creek watershed. It's the third largest tributary to Clear Lake. The watershed upstream of the Main Street Bridge is about 42 square miles. It's one of the few remaining Clear Lake's tributaries that still has a large population of hitch, and it flows down from Cobb Mountain. I am not going to talk too much about the hitch and their population decline over the last few years, because you've heard lots of other great presentations today and yesterday about this. But needless to say, their population is still not great, and they're still in trouble and need help. Kelsey Creek, I want to talk a little bit about the land use impacts. It's been severely impacted by gravel mining. There's been about 15 feet of incision in the channel around the area of the Kelseyville. There are also reduced in-stream flows from diversions and pumping. There's decreased water quality from runoff, and there's significant reduction in habitat from lack of access to the upper watershed, and also reduction in the amount of nearshore marshes, and also predatory animals in the lake that feed off of them. So they have a bunch of adversity to overcome. Whoops, that's going backwards. Here we go. A little bit about hydrology and a little bit about the competition for resources here. In the graph, we've got a typical wet year and dry year hydrograph, and you can see that the irrigation period and frost protection, wine grape and pear irrigation there. And you can see that when the hitch spawn, and that there's the potential for conflict over resources. And as we move into a period of longer droughts and more frequent droughts, water availability will continue to be an issue for the hitch. A little bit about the Main Street Bridge and the grade control structure. The bridge was built in 1947. The grade control structure was built across the channel to control incision and keep the bridge piers from being undermined. There is a bit of, even with the extension of the bridge piers, they are still continuing to be undermined. Let's see, the grade control structure is about 50 feet wide. It consists of grouted rock. There's about a 5-foot drop. There's an apron that extends out. I believe in the 90s, it's not well documented when the fish passage structure was built. Actually, I'll talk about that on the next slide, but it talks a lot about incision, and even now there's still about a 6-foot deep scour hole downstream of the grade control structure and the fish passage structure, and that's continuing to cause it's undermining both of those structures. A little bit more about the fish passage structure. It's made out of concrete. Like I said, I believe it was built in the 90s, maybe late 80s. If anybody in the audience knows more about the when that structure was put in and by who, I'd love to hear more about it. My understanding is it might have been like the local club or group of people who put it in, but there's not very much information known about it. What we do know is that it doesn't pass fish right now. It's currently being undermined. There are holes in it. It's very porous, meaning the water pours out of it. It doesn't function the way they initially developed it. It's about 3 feet of incision at the downstream extent, and it is definitely a passage barrier for the hitch. If we remove this barrier, it provides access of I think it's like 6 to 7 miles of additional access for habitat upstream. This is one of the primary barriers in the watershed, and give a huge shout out to Ben and the work that he's done with his crew to help on the downstream barrier and make that more passable for fish. So this is the next big one to take care of. The project objectives and components. So objectives are really simple. It's to improve passage for the hitch and other native species. It will include demolition and removal of the existing fish passage ladder and the grade control structure. We plan for construction of a series of step pools that will allow the hitch to move up. And it will also provide scour protection for the Main Street Bridge. I want to go through a little bit about some of the design constraints and some of the criteria that we used when we first started looking at this. The bridge is considered historical. It was seismically retrofitted. There is the grade control structure that was built in front of it. Flood conveyance is not a major issue here. It is, of course, a major concern with the adjacent residential and commercial properties in downtown Kelseyville being really close by. Some of the interesting components of the hitch is they rarely jump. We're really focused on salmon and providing passage for them, and they're great jumpers. So the hitch is a little bit of a different species, and it definitely requires a different approach. They also appreciate attraction flows so that they know where to go, and that's another challenge at the Main Street Bridge right now. Some of our original criteria was we wanted to keep slope below 3%. We had passage flows. Doing some general hydrology analysis, we came up to 15 to 200 CFS. We want to keep the velocities below 5 CFS, 5 feet per second. And we want to have at least half a foot depth, and talk a little bit about the alternatives that we came up with when we first started looking at this structure back in about 2015. We came up with 4 different alternatives. One was to enlarge the existing structure. Another one was to separate a high flow and a low flow channel, and then have a meandering single or multi-stage channel. Also, we looked at a rough and ramp design. That's more to simulate a natural channel bed. We came up with the advantages and disadvantages of all of these, and we decided that the best solution was a rough and ramp multi-stage channel with no steps, and we came up with a conceptual design and then left it to do additional analysis. So some of the key components of this initial design are that it has a low flow channel that's about 8 feet wide and 1 foot deep. It does have slope that's less than 3%. We did a lot of analysis of what would be the ideal slope to maximize or to optimize passage and minimize the footprint of the project. And then we propose placing large boulders upstream to prevent debris from clogging the low flow channel. We obtained additional funding and continued working on the project. And the idea was to advance the design. And so we started our next step of engineering work on this. We went back and looked at the hydrology and revised the hydrology substantially. We increased the minimum flow up to 25 CFS and the high flow up to 526 CFS. And let's see, what are the other important, the major finding from our additional analysis of our proposed design was that it wouldn't be stable and that it would incise, and that the natural bed, we were unable to maintain that with the high velocities and shear stresses that occur at the site. Although the channel is relatively wide upstream and downstream, it really narrows down right at the bridge, and so you get a concentration of shear stresses through there that make it difficult to maintain a natural channel bed without some sort of structure to hold it together. So we came up with a step pool design that has grouted boulder veins that go across the channel, and then a series of pools. There is a cross vein every other pool, and that provides structure to provide the grade control. Just another view of the same design. The gray area is what we call engineered stream bed material, and it's just a specified mixture of sediments that we believe will be stable in that location, and it's packed in place. It looks natural, but you fill it in with the coarser material, and then you put the fines on top of it and wash them in with water so that the material stays in there and it's packed together. It's just another way to try and keep this area from unraveling. We see protecting the bridge as a key component, and so our design there is a fair amount of structure in the channel, but it does more mimic more of a natural channel with the step pool. Just a little bit more of the detail of some of the rock cross veins and the low flow channel that's in the center. We stuck with the 8-foot wide, 1-foot deep channel that we had in our original design, and you can see that our steps, there's about a half-foot jump or step between the pool at the top of the water surface elevation there, and the pools typically are about 2 feet deep from the crest down to the bottom. Let's see. Using the hydraulic model was really important for design. The previous presentation did a great job of explaining what a hydraulic model is. We used what's considered a coupled or nested hydraulic model, where we used 1D HEC-RAS on the upstream and downstream area just to give us water surface elevations. And then we used a 2D model within the actual study site so that we could really see detail how the fish passage structure would perform. And we looked at velocities, inundation extents, depths, and we looked at various different flows. I'm going to show 2 flows just to show you an example of our results. And first of all, we're gonna look at depths and velocities through the structure at 2 different design flows, and then we're gonna look at the 100-year flow to see what the flood conveyance looks like during the flood of record, or not of record, but what's considered the design flood. All right, so low passage flow, 25 CFS. The structure performs great. We meet our criteria for depth and velocity at 25 CFS. We water is confined mostly to the series of step pools or the low flow channel. When we bump up the discharge to 526 CFS, we still meet the criteria for depth, but our velocity in the main, in the low flow channels, or exceeds our threshold. But there is a lot of area where velocities are lower out on the fringes, and we feel that the fish can still make it up there. It just, they will likely come up in steps and hold and then move up. So it's a challenging site to work with, and there are some additional modifications and tweaks that we'll continue to explore to refine the design. Flood conveyance. So it is important for people, if you put this new structure in there, how's it going to change the flood risk in this particular area? Because of the incision from gravel mining, there is a lot of excess flood capacity. And the brown lines across the top, those are the two banks, the right and left bank, the elevations. And then the two blue lines are the existing 100-year discharge going through the structure, or going through the site. And then the darker blue line is the proposed discharge. And so you can see there's a little bit of a increase in water surface elevation right at the structure. It's a few feet, but there's plenty of capacity here at the 100-year discharge. And you can see that these lines, the blue lines, are very similar upstream and downstream. So there's virtually no increase in the water surface elevation in the upstream and downstream, and you get a little bit of a increase as you go through the new structure. Sorry, thank you. I wanted to provide an update on the permitting status of the project. We've been working through the design. We have a CEQA MND application pack, or mitigated negative declaration package, ready to go. We're waiting for landowner approval before the county, who is the lead agency for CEQA, can approve it and submit it. We have a package ready for the 401 water quality certification. We also have our CDFW lake and stream bed alteration agreement application ready to go. And there's a Lake County grading permit we have that package set up as well. Lastly, the 404 wetland project application is ready as well. We did a few specialized surveys associated with this project. There's the rare plant survey, cultural resources, and aquatic resource delineation. So we have, with our existing design, we have a fair amount of environmental analysis that is really pretty close to finalized. And if there are modifications to our structure, we're looking to reduce the length of the footprint. And so we think that even if there is a revision that reduces the footprint, that we won't have to reduce CEQA, because we'll be making it smaller, not bigger. The next steps, we want to continue working with Lake County and CDFW to obtain landowner access to do the project, to implement it. And we are currently working with CDFW to optimize the design and minimize the footprint. One thing that we're looking at is enhancements to the piers on the Main Street Bridge, to see if we can either remove or reduce the elevation needed for the grade control structure, if that would reduce the number of steps that we need. So that's very exciting. And last step is, of course, to secure all the construction funding. We've made good progress on that, so I'll explain here. I want to thank all of our project partners and the funding that various different agencies have provided. CDFW is helping with the fish passage design review, and they're funding the current design process. Lake County, they are the CEQA lead, and they're taking the lead on landowner access. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, through the Tribal Wildlife Grant programs, they funded the alternative development and the design development. And then CNRA, through the Blue Ribbon Committee, for construction funding, and also Caltrans as mitigation for the 3 bridges projects. There's mitigation funding that will be put towards this project to construct it. And with that, I can answer any questions. You can reach out to me, and also Sarah Ryan, who I believe is still here. You can ask her about it. There are many people who have been working on this project. Thank you, everybody, for your continued support and help.
Any questions for Anthony?
I think that this is more of a question for you because you're CDFW, but I'm just wondering, since it does have the fish in the creek, are you doing a 2081 incidental take permit for this as well?
So actually, I'm not in our permitting department. I'm a fish biologist by trade, but I am the person that will grab our permitting folks and drag them to the table when the time comes. But of course, seeing DFW being involved, we're going to follow our own rules. So yes.
So that's a good question. We were discussing that recently, and since I've been working on this project from 2015, seen a lot of drought during that period, and I've always been working under the assumption that there's probably not that much need for take or incidental take permit because the creek will be dry, or in most of those years the creek has been dried. But in wet years there is water year round in the creek, and so if construction does occur in a wet year, we will need to do some sort of flow bypass and probably do a incidental take permit. But that remains to be seen. I guess this might be the only time that you actually hope that you have a dry year. Yes.
One question back here. I'm wondering about the rare plant survey. Do you know offhand if you found any rare plants in the Kelsey Creek?
I believe in this area we did not find anything that was rare in terms of the vegetation types, but I do not. It's just my recollection.
The reason I ask is because there's a semaphore grass, and the original site of it was found in Kelsey Creek, and it hasn't been seen, as far as I can tell, since it was found, which was many, many decades ago. And botanists would love to have a sample of it again.
As far as I know, we didn't find any, but I'll ask our permitting lead to review the vegetation report.
We'll have one more question and then ask our speakers to come up for a brief panel discussion.
Thanks, Anthony. Just a quick question. Once you do have landowner approval and secure all the necessary permits and everything that you need to do, how long do you anticipate this project taking? And, if it is feasible to maybe do when the water's out of the creek to minimize impacts to the hitch?
Great question. So I think if in an ideal world, if everything fell into place really quickly, and probably the most challenging part is the landowner access, we could, and I think we could go to construction as soon as next year. That would be in an ideal world, and a lot of pieces would have to come together. But it also depends on what we see from our design review with CDFW. If we do decide to integrate modification of the bridge into the project, that would probably extend the design period by another year. So you'd be looking at 2026. But I think, assuming the landowner issues are worked out, we're pretty close to move it forward. And once we have designs that are developed, it'd be easy to pull together the specifications and the bid documents and get a contractor going pretty quickly. We do have a construction window, which is late summer. So, it's not going to make it this year, obviously. Best case scenario would be late summer next year. And if not that, hopefully the following year.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you all.